Welcome back to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Jesse Ewell, and today we're going to be talking about the habit of memory. Now, I have a special guest on the show today, and his name is actually Chester Santos. He is the U.S. memory champion. He's also a best-selling author of Master Memory. He's a speaker, not only in the U.S., but internationally, and he's the International Man of Memory, and he's also the creator of the Memory School. Chester, thank you for being on here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jesse. I'm excited to do the interview with you and to help people improve their ability to remember things.
Yeah, this couldn't have came at a better time. So, I feel like this is something that comes up quite a bit, is just this idea of memory. And what does this actually mean to you to be, the U.S. memory champion? Like, what exactly does that mean? What did you have to do to get that?
Yeah, so I won the United States Memory Championship. Actually, when I won it, it's already been about 10 years ago.
Okay.
In that competition, I had to do things like memorize a deck of cards. I memorized it in less than 2 minutes. I was able to do it in about 90 seconds at one point, 52 cards shuffled up. We have to memorize hundreds of names, hundreds of computer-generated random digits in minutes, also a 50-line poem that's written for the competition. We memorized that in about 15 minutes. So it's one full day of memorizing, usually in New York City. It's also recently been held at MIT, the university. Just one full day of stretching your memory to the limit. Since winning that competition, I've spent the last 10 plus years training other people around the world in the subset of memory techniques that I not only used to win the U.S. Memory Championship, but that I also feel can help people to become more successful in their career, in their personal life, and also this is huge if you have any kids in school. This is huge for kids in school as well.
Yeah, this is amazing, man. I have a 11-year-old, 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So I actually found growing up, one of the toughest things for me to do once I hit high school was, to read or just to remember anything that I studied or learned about. It was one of the most difficult things that I did. But how did you first get into this idea of improving your memory?
Yeah, so it all started with, it was sort of random how I ended up in the field I'm in now. I just happened to be flipping channels one night, and I caught a segment on ABC's 2020, that evening news program. They had a segment on the United States Memory Championship, and it sparked my interest because I often got the comment a lot growing up, wow, you have a really good memory. So when I saw that on TV, I thought, well, maybe I can do well in this competition. But when I looked into what the best people in the country were scoring in various events, memorizing hundreds of names, digits in just like a few minutes perfectly, I quickly found out that although I had a good starting point, had a good memory, I was nowhere near that level. So that's when I started doing a lot of research into, how can anyone really magnify their memory ability from where it's currently at? And eventually I did find what worked best for me. I won the U.S. Memory Championship, and then since then I've spent, again, the last 10 plus years training people. I've given presentations now in more than 30 different countries for various types of organizations, various types of professionals, helping people to use these techniques to remember presentations, right?
Wow.
To minimize the amount of notes they use, or eventually get to no notes at all, right? Memorize foreign language vocabulary, important exam material. It could be not just kids in school, but also for professional certification exams. Even when you are meeting with clients, potential clients, or colleagues, having important business-related facts and figures, having easy access to that, you suddenly become much more impressive. You're perceived to be more of an expert in your field. Memory skills, as I like to call them, memory skills really help you to demonstrate your expertise. And I feel that in today's day and age, in which the average person can't remember that much at all because we are all outsourcing our memory now to all of these electronic devices.
Right.
In this environment, when you actually develop your ability to remember important things, it goes really a long way. A little bit goes a long way nowadays to set yourself apart from other professionals and make yourself more memorable.
Yeah, what I think is really cool is you've made this your career out of something that you are super passionate about. And I always love seeing people, like, what did you do before you got into this? And then, like, how did this actually become kind of your, career and passion and stuff like that?
Yeah, so very good question there, Jesse. I used to be a software engineer, actually.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I have a master's degree in software engineering, and I used to work in the Silicon Valley. But I started training for this U.S. Memory Championship in my spare time.
Okay.
And when I would go every year, I would hear about some people that were in the speaking profession, giving seminars, and it really intrigued me. And I was hearing about all the cool places that they would get to visit, and it just sounded more interesting to me than staying in my cubicle coding all day, which I did enjoy actually that profession. But I think that I've always, although I was left-brained, logical, I always did have this creativity and imagination aspect to my mind as well. And I was able to tap into that with this sort of training. And then when I won the U.S. Memory Championship, it helped me to build a platform to where I was able to start giving speeches and presentations on memory skills. That's really how it started. I quit after winning the U.S. Memory Championship because I was, within a few days, I got on CNN, and I was getting all these newspaper, magazine, TV requests. I wanted to take advantage of that, so I did the risky thing. I don't recommend that people necessarily do this, but I actually quit my job right away and tried to dive into this full time, which is risky, but I wanted to ride that wave and really take as much advantage of all of that media attention as I could.
Sure.
And it helped me to, transition into this as a career. Now it's been going well for, the last 10 plus years. I will say it was rough in the beginning to turn this into a new career, but now things are going more how I envisioned, and I feel very lucky to do what I am passionate about, and that, something I really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first couple of years I became an entrepreneur, and, just how much, people have no idea, like, what it really takes to build a business, no matter what, like, no matter if you're an expert, like you were at memory, to no matter what, like I did, was I opened up my own personal training facilities, then into my own coaching business. But people really have no idea, what that actually takes. And to run a business is much different than being passionate about something. But what I found is when you can combine those two things, that's where the real magic happens.
Yes, you're absolutely right there, Jesse. And I had no idea myself when I went into this. I had no idea. I thought, okay, I won the U.S. Memory Championship. I'm on all these TV shows. Okay, people are going to start hiring me. No, it wasn't that easy, right? There's quite a lot to learning the business side. And, that's why for sure, even the first 3 to 4 years were pretty rough. I had to learn a lot of new things. But now, that I have things rolling pretty well, it's just amazing. I feel, again, just super fortunate to be able to do what I'm doing. I've been to over 30 countries doing this. I've been able to visit, so many cool and interesting places, and just really have some life experiences that I never would have been able to have if I didn't follow my passion. And I definitely had to learn, how to run a business.
So as let's go back to, you started working on your memory. You had that one day. How long did that actually take you to become this U.S. memory champion? Like, how many years did it take you to do that?
Yeah, it's pretty intense. They consider the U.S. Memory Championship memory sports. It's considered a mental sport. Just
Hmm.
like chess would be considered a mental sport, and nowadays it is even more intense and more difficult than when I won it 10 years ago. Nowadays it's almost like training for the Olympics or something, really.
Oh,
So
wow.
I used to, when I was a software engineer, I would, in the evenings after work, practice memorizing things for about a few hours a day. And on the weekends, I would be training for about 5 hours a day on the weekends. And nowadays, that's not even enough. It's like a full-time thing, basically like a professional athlete, but a professional, mental athlete. It's basically how it is nowadays. So it's just really intense to push your brain to that, push the boundaries to where you're able to memorize a deck of cards. I used to do it like in competition consistently under 2 minutes. I have done it in less than 90 seconds, but now there are some guys out there that can actually do it in less than 30 seconds. So
Wow.
just like in physical sports where the records
Yeah.
are broken and people are finding new limits to what is possible, it's the same thing with the brain as well. It's very interesting.
Is there a, like, what's crazy is like I played college sports, but is there is there something that you can do to improve your memory faster? And is like, so athletes are constantly like on the cutting edge of, training, working out, recovery, all these things. But is there things similar to this in memory?
Yeah, so there definitely is. So when you, as is the case with anything, once you have the right technique, right, the right approach, and you put in, then with the right approach only, when you put in the training and practice consistently is the key word. Consistently, you are going to improve. And in terms of memory, it doesn't take that much for the average person to see a huge benefit because not everybody needs to memorize a deck of cards in less than 90 seconds, right?
Right.
But anyone really could benefit from just improving their memory a little bit to where they don't need to use a lot of notes when giving presentations, right? When they can have certain key things committed to memory to demonstrate their expertise when meeting with clients, potential clients, right? So for the average person out there to see a big benefit, it doesn't take that much, but it does take the right approach, and it does take consistent practice over time. It could be as little as 1 hour a week. Even I have an executive client of mine. I work with clients all over the world because for my private coaching, I only do private coaching on a very limited basis, but we do phone calls. So it works with, people all over the world. One of my clients based in Dallas, Texas, because he's amazed at what he's able to do now in terms of his memory, he wants to write a book on the concept is the power of just 1 hour a week. And it's absolutely true. If you will just do 1 hour a week consistently, all of a sudden, a year or two later, you almost have like a superpower that you've developed,
Wow.
is consistently over time. And in terms of the right techniques for memory, I'll give you some key principles that I think people watching this will really benefit from. One is no matter what you are trying to remember, okay, whether it's a name, points from a presentation, whatever it might be, try to turn that information into a visual, a picture, or maybe a series of pictures, something that you can see in your mind, because we are very good at remembering things that we see. An example that I would give in my presentations, keynote presentations, is that, we've all experienced this, where you will run into somebody that you could have met years ago. You may have met that person years in the past. Oftentimes, right away, instantly, you remember their face, right? You know that you've met them somewhere before, but you
Right.
can't remember the name, right? Pretty common experience. Something else we can all relate to. Let's say you go to a party, all right? You're meeting a lot of new people at this party. One of your friends attends the party with you. 2 weeks after it's over, you're talking with that same friend that had attended with you, and your friend says, "Hey, Jesse, you remember that attorney that we met at the party a couple weeks ago? He's also a member of the golf club downtown." As your friend's going through that description, a lot of times you are able to picture that guy from the party, right? You might even remember what he was wearing that night when you met him, but you can't come up with the name, right? Third and final example related to this, how many times have you been describing to a friend or family member an actor from a TV show or movie? As you're going through the description, yourself and your family member, you guys can picture the actor that you're describing. Crystal clear in your mind, you can picture the person, but you can't come up with the name, and both of you are really frustrated, right? Those three examples all illustrate that when it comes to dealing with people, we tend to be, most of us are pretty good at remembering faces, but we're not nearly as good at remembering names, right? And when you think it makes sense, because when we are meeting people or when we're interacting with people in various ways, we always see the face. The face is recorded into our visual memory, but at no point do we see the name. The name is something much more abstract to the brain. So one way to get better at remembering names, and also other things, try to turn the name into a visual. So maybe Mike is a microphone. Alice, I might visualize a white rabbit because that would remind me of Alice in Wonderland, right? But coming up with that visual is really powerful, really helpful. In the case of names, I would also recommend attaching that to something about the person's look. So for instance, if I'm meeting a woman named Alice, and to me, just personally, when I meet her, what I notice about her is her hair. I think she has really beautiful hair. I would focus in on that physical characteristic, and I might have the white rabbit playing around in her hair, getting tangled up in her hair. So what happens is, the next time I see this woman, I just have to ask myself, what did I notice about her look? If it was her hair before, it's likely that's what I would notice again. Immediately, the image of the white rabbit comes back to me, reminding me that her name is Alice. So that's sort of how it sounds a little weird, but it's very powerful, effective. And again, people can get really good at it. I actually open my presentations with naming hundreds of people in the audience, believe it or not, to start, after just meeting everybody, in the beginning. So you can get really good with training and practice. So one principle is visuals.
Okay. So, what's crazy is, as you're telling me this, I was a personal trainer for 20 years, and I could remember people's names and their body fat and any injuries they had if I hadn't seen them in like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years.
Wow.
And I remember working at like a bigger box gym. And then when I opened my own business, some people came in from there, but I hadn't seen them in years. Yeah. But I could remember things about them, years later, and I hadn't seen them. And so as you're saying that, I could remember, in the gym, I could always associate movement or something about them with their name. But I always had a hard time outside of the gym doing that.
Yeah, because of the context is different. Yeah. So if you'll employ that sort of visual technique based on physical characteristics, then it would be even more effective even outside of the gym. But that's awesome that you were able to do that, because you had your method of coming up with, connections, associations, right? And as I'm sure you experienced, people are so impressed with you, and they have more confidence in you and your abilities when you're able to do that, right?
Yeah.
So, and some people are not that, they don't have their methodology that works really well for them. So I give people, some strategies that really anybody can learn, and you've experienced that it can be very useful for you, definitely, in your business.
Right.
Another principle beyond visualization is add additional senses to it if you can. So not just see this stuff, but like add taste, touch, smell. What's happening there is you're then activating more areas of your brain, and you're building more connections in your mind to the information, making it easier to retrieve it later on. A third and final principle, I don't want to, overdose you guys with too much here in this interview. A third and final principle is making that all crazy, unusual, extraordinary as well. So you're seeing it, you're adding additional senses, and make it the whole thing crazy, unusual, because there is a psychological aspect to human memory. We all tend to remember things that catch us by surprise, that are strange, unusual, right? If right now, as we're doing this interview, if an elephant crashed into the room and started spraying water on you right now with its trunk, if that actually happens, you would probably remember that for the rest of your life, right? Without even trying to commit that to memory, right? So there's this psychological aspect to human memory, knowing that we can harness it, we can take advantage of it, and we can apply it to things that would be very useful to remember names, presentations, and so on. I would like to, if you're up for it, Jesse, do an exercise that will what I want to do is try to put all of that together. So we've talked about visuals, senses, we've talked about making things crazy unusual. Let's try to put that all together, and people watching this can follow along. I hope people will find it to be a fun exercise. Let's try to commit to memory very quickly here the following random list of words, all right? Just do your best.
Okay.
Follow along as well. Just do your best. It's going to be monkey, iron, rope, kite, house, paper, shoe, worm, envelope, pencil, river, rock, tree, cheese, and dollar, right? That is the random list of words. Now, a lot of times when I recite that list of words to audiences, I get looks from people like, come on, man, you can't be serious. There's no way I'm going to do that, not unless you give me a lot of time to do it. But Jesse, you're going to have this down, and people following along will also have it down in just about 3 minutes. That's it. A few minutes time. And believe it or not, without any further review, even next week, you would still know all of the words forwards and backwards. They will just be locked in your memory. You won't even be able to get rid of them. How you will pull this off, what I want for you to do is just listen to what I described to you and just try and see and experience it in your mind as best you can. That's it, okay? The whole key to this, and I would say out of everything I'm talking about during the interview today, one of the most important things is going to be to hopefully shift your approach when it comes to any memory task, remembering languages, presentations, whatever it is, rather than coming at it as a difficult and boring exercise in memory. Try to approach it more just as a fun opportunity to use your creativity and imagination, right? That little shift in your approach will make just a huge difference in the ability to remember really anything at all. So if people were to take a look at my website, just chestersantos.com, they would see right on the front page a bunch of my media clips. One is CNN. So on CNN, I had to memorize during the commercial break a half deck of cards, okay? And then when they came back live on the air, it was live, not recorded, so a lot of pressure on me there. You'll see me shaking the table and stuff. I was so nervous during the interview. When they came back live, I had to recite that from memory. And you'll notice that when I'm memorizing the cards, I'm smiling, I'm giggling. I think they thought I was a little bit crazy or nutty when I was on that show. That's the key. Just if you all, Jesse and people watching this, your viewers, if they're just having fun, it will be easier, right? So just relax, try to have fun with it. The first word was monkey, so just try to see a monkey in your mind dancing around. It's making monkey noises, whoop, 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 whatever monkey. I'm working on the monkey impression. The point here is to see and hear the monkey, right? Just visualize that. The monkey now picks up a gigantic iron, all right, because that was the next word. So just see this monkey dancing around with a giant iron. The iron starts to fall, but a rope attaches itself to the iron. Maybe even feel the rope. Maybe it feels sort of rough. Just really interact with it, all right? You look up the rope. You see that the other end of the rope is attached to a kite flying around in the air. Maybe you reach up and try and touch that kite, but it's just out of your reach, all right? Kite, awesome. The kite now crashes into the side of a house. Really just try to see it crash into that house. The house, you notice, is completely covered in paper. For some strange reason, it's covered in paper. Paper was the next word I had given you. See that paper. Out of nowhere, a shoe appears, and it starts to walk all over the paper. Maybe it's messing it up as it's walking on it, that shoe, okay? The shoe smells pretty badly, so you decide to investigate and see why. You look inside of that shoe, and you find a little worm crawling around inside of the shoe. Really see that smelly worm, all right? The smelly worm now jumps out of the shoe and into an envelope, all right? Maybe it's going to mail itself or something. I don't know. Envelope was next. Out of nowhere, a pencil appears, and it starts to write very quickly on the envelope. Maybe it's addressing it, that pencil, all right? See that just as best you can. The pencil now jumps into a river, and there's a huge splash. For some reason, when that little pencil hits the river The river, you notice, is crashing up against a giant rock, all right, against a giant rock. The rock flies out of the river. It crashes into a tree. That tree is growing cheese. You probably haven't seen a tree like that one. This one's growing cheese. And out of each piece of cheese shoots $1, right? Last word was dollar, so you see $1 coming out. That's it. Now, probably everybody watching this, you probably all already know the list, but I'm going to go through this again in about 30 seconds, very quickly. You'll just review the story that you've created in your mind. That's it, right? So we had a monkey. It was dancing around with what? An iron. What then attached? A rope. The other end of the rope was attached to what? A kite. What did the kite crash into? A house. What was the house covered in? Paper. What walked on it? A shoe. What was crawling in the shoe? A worm. The worm then jumped into the envelope, right? What wrote on it? A pencil. The pencil jumped into what? It was the river. The river was crashing into the rock. The rock flew into the tree, which was growing cheese, and what came out? $1. So now everybody watching this should be able to recall the entire random list of words pretty easily by just going through that story, and each major object will give you the next word. So Jesse, you're on the spot now. Just give it a try, and people can follow along. Give it your best shot.
All right. Monkey, iron, rope, rope down. Is it house or crashing into the house?
You got it. So you just skipped one. That's all right. The other end of the rope was attached to the kite.
Kite, then house.
Got it.
Then paper.
Yeah.
Then shoe.
Got it.
Then worm.
Yes.
Then envelope.
Uh-huh.
Then pencil.
Yep.
Then river.
Got it.
Then rock.
Yep.
Then, hold on, I got it. River, rock. Jumped out of the river into the tree.
You got it, man. Yes.
Into cheese, into the $1.
Awesome, man.
Did I get it all?
That was great, man. Great job, Jesse. Under pressure there too, man. I put the host on the spot there, but that was so awesome. Very quickly, you memorize that entire random list of words. That technique there is called the story method, and it's just one of many techniques that memory champions like myself use to pull off these feats of memory. So, you know, over the years, they've asked me to be on the Science Channel, Discovery Channel, a bunch of different news programs, PBS Nova Science, that was another show I was on. They asked me to be on all these shows and perform memory feats and then give for tips to viewers as well. But there's nothing different about my brain at all, okay, compared to everyone else's. That's what I want people to realize, that really I've just learned these techniques that are powerful and effective, and I've put in a little bit of training and practice. Everybody out there, everyone is capable of doing more with their memory with just the right technique and a little bit of practice. Again, you know, this doesn't need to be a monkey and iron. This could be points from a presentation or something, right? This could be 5 or 10 key things you want to make sure that you mention when you're meeting with a client or a potential client to better demonstrate your expertise, right? There's so many practical applications. Memory is fundamental to learning. So it's going to have a positive impact on many different areas of your career, your personal life, and then also, of course, as I mentioned, I'll mention again, this is huge for kids in school.
Yeah, I think about this for my kids, and I've actually taken a few trainings on this. However, I think I failed at this. It was this same thing. I think it was 20 words.
Oh, okay.
I think it was first 10, then it went to 20, and for whatever reason, I could never figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I'm like, man, that was pretty easy to do that. But you realize when I was looking for the story, and once I found the story, then it was easy to match up the word. Exactly.
You totally got it. That's exactly right. And this is just one technique again, but with this one and other techniques you will learn, I do want to point out that when I'm giving you the story, right, it's going to be more difficult for you to remember it because that story makes sense to me.
Okay.
But once you've learned the techniques, and you start to implement them yourself with your own imagery, it's going to be even easier for you to remember things. I want to impress upon people that this doesn't apply, again, just to like a monkey and an iron, right? Random words. Really, this applies to anything, even complex types of information. So I was a speaker at Harvard University. You can find on my website a testimonial from the Harvard Graduate Council. So they had me give seminars for the Harvard business students, law students, medical students. Even very complex types of information can be tackled as well. Jesse, because you did so well with that one, I want to test you out on one other one. This one will only take 1 minute, I promise. It's a much shorter version, but it does a good job of illustrating how this applies to more than just like a monkey and an iron, right?
Sure.
So just 1 minute, let's give it a try. People can follow along. I want for you, Jesse, to just visualize some giant machines, okay? Whatever that looks like to you, to visualize these giant machines, all right? The giant machines are smashing up a huge pile of gold and silver, all right? The machines are smashing up the gold and silver, all right? Rising up out of the gold and silver, vehicles, whatever comes to mind for you for vehicles, they rise up. Shooting out of the vehicles, shooting out of the windows, medicine. Medicine shoots out of the vehicles, see that, medicine. And exploding out of the medicine, oil. Maybe you see some black petroleum oil is probably easiest to visualize. Oil explodes out of the medicine, right? That was it. That was the whole exercise there. Let's just quickly review that. So we had these giant machines, right? The giant machines were smashing up what? Gold and
silver.
What rose up? Vehicles rose up. What shot out of the vehicles?
Medicine.
And what exploded out of the medicine?
Oil.
Exploded out of it, right? So Jesse, try to recite those back for me if you can. Do your best job.
Okay, so number 1 was giant machinery.
Got it.
Number 2 was gold and silver.
Yeah.
Number 3 was vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 was medication.
Yep.
And number 5 was oil.
You got it, man. Awesome job there. Again, under pressure. It's not easy when your guest just puts you on the spot like that to do.
Hey, man, it's all good. I actually am enjoying this.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it because I'm sure it's not the norm that a guest would like put you through all these brain exercises. So Jesse, what you actually did there without realizing it, or maybe you did realize it, the way you gave those back to me makes me wonder if maybe you did know what you were doing there. I was trying to trick you there. I kind of tricked you into learning actually the top 5 exports of the UK. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so if you were to look that up right now, you're going to find listed as the UK's top exports. It's going to list machinery, precious metals, vehicles, pharmaceuticals, and oil. So there, with that exercise, you start to see how the image doesn't need to perfectly match what you're trying to remember. Basically, what you're doing is you're building up mental note cards or mental cue cards that will remind you of what you want to remember. It can be something even a little bit broader. It might not seem like that much at first, but again, when you're meeting with clients, potential clients, or this is a presentation, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It goes a long way. When you can do this, people are going to start looking at you like, wow, that guy really knows his stuff. Obviously, this guy is the expert, right? Because, again, most people these days can't do this. They're so reliant on the technology that there is, again, nowadays a really big opportunity to be more impressive and more memorable to people when you actually develop your memory skills. And hopefully people are realizing already that this can be fun. It's not necessarily difficult. It can be a lot of fun. And it's amazing what you can do with the right technique and a little bit of practice.
So when you did this back when you first started, did you have a coach you worked with, or did you do a lot of this on your own, or did you have family and friends?
Great question. So I did it the hard way, right? And it took me years and years to get really good. So I did it the hard way, and I read every single book I could out there on memory training techniques. I did all sorts of online research. I found what worked well for me because, some things didn't work well at all for me, right? That were in online. And I found with a lot of years of experimentation, basically, I found what worked best for me personally, I stuck to training myself in that small subset of techniques until that helped me to win the U.S. Memory Championship. And then since then, I've spent, the last 10 plus years training people, just focusing on the small subset of techniques that I feel people can learn right away and can put to use right away in their career and their personal life. So you're benefiting from, I have an online memory school now that I just launched it this year. It's brand new. It's video training from me, so people can check out my website, and you're benefiting from basically my years of experimentation. And now you have me as a coach who's coached people for, 10 plus years. So you'll get the shortcut version into improving your memory.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So I don't know if you said this, but how long did it take you from when you're like, hey, I'm going to do this to you being the U.S. champion? Like, how many years in between that? How long did it take you to do that?
So I saw that segment on ABC's 2020 in the year 2000.
Okay.
I didn't end up competing until 2003. And to be honest, for those few years, I did train, but it wasn't, I wasn't consistent. It wasn't like as much as I should have. And I competed in 2003. I did actually pretty well because I did have some natural ability to begin with. I took third place in 2003.
Oh, wow.
And then I kept on getting third place, though. I could not, and it was bugging me at one point because I was close to the top and I knew that I could win it. And so finally what happened is in the year 2008, I became pretty much obsessed with winning it at that point because I was tired of being so close and not winning. And I went really overboard in my training. And then that year I won it pretty easily. Like I blew everybody away in 2008 when I won it. So it was years. Basically, I got more intense in my training as I realized that, it just took a lot more effort to go from that third in the country to number one in the country.
Right.
I see this in physical sports as well. A lot of times there's actually a big gap between the third place and the first place guy has just put in the extra effort. He goes a lot harder in his training.
Now, was there, so say like in athletics, say you might have a coach that maybe you're doing like massage, maybe you're doing, all these like cryotherapy, all these recovery techniques, but is there things like that you do in memory, like maybe meditation, maybe like things to just rest your brain? Because I know when my brain gets overloaded, it's like I have to meditate just to feel like it's back to, this stable place. But is there things that you're doing like that to help your brain kind of recover and recuperate?
Yeah, great question. Unfortunately, I didn't hire like coaches for those sorts of things, but I have no doubt that would have helped me. I probably could have, won the competition even earlier than I did. I think it definitely would improve performance. I think that meditation is very beneficial to your memory. Being able to be calm and relaxed is important for effective learning and memory. One aspect to my training that will help with that is that if you do train with these types of techniques consistently over time, it will improve your confidence in your memory ability. And when you have improved confidence in your ability to remember, it helps you to be more relaxed, when you have to recall in certain situations. But I didn't have that sort of coach for the other aspects that are related to memory, but I'm sure that it would have definitely benefited me. One thing I'd like to mention sort of related to that is that there are things that aren't necessarily memory specifically, but related that can be improved with training as well. And one is, concentrating in distracting environments. So when you're in the U.S. Memory Championship, there are all these TV cameras and people everywhere, reporters, and there's an audience at one point, a huge audience watching you. So, you've got to learn to focus under those conditions. I actually liked to train myself a lot of times in really distracting environments, noisy, like even a noisy bar or something, because the concept is that when I was able to train myself to concentrate in those really distracting conditions, when you got into the auditorium and it was quiet, I was able to have almost like a laser-like focus, and just, the people in my peripheral vision and the audience sitting there it wasn't as distracting to me because I was able to do well with, a noisy bar environment, right? Another thing related is that you can also train yourself to concentrate for longer and longer periods without getting distracted. All right. So that's something else that can be developed, but it's all about focus and training yourself consistently to get your brain to do that.
Yeah. The first thing I think of when you're saying that is like, okay, like you could literally make up a course on how to train people to not check their iPhone, to not check social media. And literally you'd probably be a millionaire if, you could do this with people. Because like one of the first things I do when I actually start coaching people is I make them swipe all the way over to the left of their iPhone and give me a screenshot of how much time they're spending on their phone and how many pickups they're doing all day long and every hour to get an idea of how much time that we can buy back in their life over the next, 12 weeks or 14 weeks. So that's kind of the first thing I thought of when you said that.
That's really cool. I love that, Jesse. That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. So what you're telling me you're doing, man, is a lot like, it reminds me of like athletics. It's, it's not always the best athletes. It's the people who are willing to be the most consistent that usually, are number one. Or the difference between number 1 and 3 isn't the ability, it's the consistency and what the person at number 1 is willing to do.
Yeah.
What the person at number 3 is willing to do. And I thought that was super cool to hear you say. You've said it at least like 5 or 6 times that consistency is what matters most, and anybody can improve their memory as long as they're consistent. And so that to me is like, okay, well, that's what separated you from a lot of other people. And so I just want you to recognize that in yourself and know that is the one thing that I think most people struggle with, whether it's in fitness, relationships, spirituality, and even in their business, is it comes down to how consistent can you be at whatever you're doing. And like you said, whether it's memory or whether it's sports or whether it's these other things, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah, it applies to business as well. As I mentioned, in the early years, it was really tough. But what I tried to do was just make some improvements and see improvements every year. And I was consistent, right? And eventually, 10 years later, it's just amazing the difference. But it's same thing in business. You're right. It applies to so many different things.
Now, did you have any idea when you became the U.S. champion that you would be doing this as your actual job, 10 years later, 12 years later?
I did have a vision because I had heard about when I was going there competing, I had heard about other people that were speaking as a business. So I did have a vision if I was able to win it, I wanted to give it a try, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And now, I have reached pretty much. I'm always trying to improve, always trying to do more, and there's a lot more that I can do, but I have now reached definitely one of my visions, and that was to be speaking all over the world. So I'm really very blessed to be able to do that now.
That's awesome, man. And I always think of, my favorite thing is to talk to people that are passionate about anything. And I remember when I first got into personal training 20 years ago, it wasn't really a normal thing for people to have a trainer, to where now today, like it seems like everybody has a trainer.
I have a
But
trainer.
I kind of think of that in your place is, maybe 10, 12 years ago, it wasn't that big of a deal to improve your memory. But like you said, today it has a huge impact on, our work. It has a huge impact on our businesses. It has a huge impact on our life. And school will never teach us how to memorize stuff this way. But I think it's really cool what you're doing and just the passion that you have in it. And you made it fun. Like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really feel like I was learning anything other than just having fun and memorizing something. And when I felt like when it was fun, there was like more of a flow to it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Jesse. I really appreciate that. And that's, I hope people, watching this interview will get, at least that message that, you can improve your memory and it can be a lot of fun. It can be a fun process with the right approach. And, kids, this makes a really big difference when they have to learn all this stuff for school, and they realize that it can actually turn into a fun process for them, creating all these crazy stories. It's huge for kids in school as well as for, business professionals.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is one habit somebody could begin doing just on a daily basis to help improve their memory?
Yeah, so, we've gone over one technique today, the story method. You could even just try to memorize random word lists consistently. It's easy to find those on the internet and just try to do it a couple times a week. I think something that everybody can relate to, though, that I highly recommend, it will be super simple for anybody to put this into practice. Try to remember some phone numbers, okay?
Okay.
Like we all used to be able to remember the phone numbers of so many friends and family members. We could easily dial those from memory. I remember growing up, my parents would give me some emergency numbers that they felt were important for me to know, right? We all used to be able to do that. Nowadays, though, you give somebody one phone number and they feel paralyzed, right? They can't even remember one number. It's so bad that some people out there today, they don't even know their own phone number. They don't. They have to pull, there's my number. They have to pull it up on their phone. But I would say definitely people like close family members, close friends that you're calling all the time, at least commit those to memory, right? Dial them from a memory, because this is going to give you a very simple way to exercise your memory on a daily basis, right? And try to do that first. I still enter things into my phone, but I memorize them as well, and I rely on my memory first. If you can't, for some reason at that minute, remember it, then use the auto dial from the address book as a last resort. But it's just that's just something that I feel like it's easy. It's going to be a way for you to exercise your memory on a daily basis.
Awesome. And 911 is not one of those numbers.
Not one of 911, no.
Hey, so
get into that habit. Get into that habit there.
Yeah, if somebody wants to work with you or do one of your courses on memory, like how would they do that?
Yeah, so I just launched this year. I've been training people around the world for 10 plus years, and I'm really happy this year to have launched an online memory school. So because private coaching, I do it on a very limited basis, and it's not, within reach for the average person out there, private coaching, but I try to give the equivalent for everyone. So it's me on high definition videos. You can learn via this online memory school. And right now, people watching this can go to my website, chestersantos.com or internationalmanofmemory.com. Both URLs will go to the same website. You will see there, if you act now, you're going to see no initiation fee or setup fee, enrollment fee. You'll get instant access to 2 courses that were priced at $400 each, but you won't have to pay anything. You'll get instant access to those. There's a free trial as well right now. So
that's awesome.
You can get started for free.
Yeah, and if you guys are listening to this, I'll make sure that they are also in the show notes, and you have those links. And so you'll be able to go back to the links inside the show notes and click on those and do this. Chester's doing this because he wants to help people and make an impact in your life. So make sure you don't waste time, because I've spent upwards to $1,000 on a few people that have done this, that don't offer anything for free. So it's very cool that you're doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Please
So what's next for you, man? Like, what's the big thing that you're doing next?
Yeah, so I'm always all over the place. I'm later this week I'll go to a client event in Mexico City. Really, some things I'm excited about are some speeches in the fall. I'm going to give a speech at the European Summit in Prague, Czech Republic, and then I'm going to give a speech about 1 week later at an artificial intelligence conference, in Mauritius. Mauritius, which is an island nation off of Africa, so that should be pretty cool. Some new places for me to visit. I'm excited about that.
Wow, that's really cool, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you being on here. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, and it's been really fun and exciting. So thank you for being on here.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Jesse. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you guys are looking to connect further with a group of like-minded people, join myself and so many others in the Habit-Based Lifestyle Secrets group on Facebook. This is where I'll be dropping daily habits to help you live to your full potential. If you want to be one of our next case studies and begin living this habit-based lifestyle, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions, comments, or requests, jesse@habitbasedlifestyle.com. Also, me and my wife are running another marriage boot camp here in Dana Point, California, September 22nd and 23rd. If you want to get hooked up for that, I'll be leaving the link in the show notes. And again, Chester's links and website will be in the show notes, and we will be looking forward to seeing this on there. Until next episode, have a great day.